I remember the candle in front of me. It was one of those cream-colored pillars my mother always bought from the fancy home goods store, the kind that cost too much and smelled like artificial cinnamon. The flame didn't flicker when my sister said it just kept burning, steady and indifferent, while the words hung in the air between us. Not everyone at this table deserves our family name. She wasn't looking at me when she said it, not directly. She was addressing the room, her head tilted in that practiced way she'd perfected over the years, half humble, half superior, like she was delivering an uncomfortable truth for everyone's benefit, like she was doing us all a favor. But I knew, the way you always know when a bullet has your name on it, even before it's fired. My name is Claire, and I learned a long time ago that being the quieter daughter doesn't make you the weaker one. It just makes you better at listening, better at noticing things, like how my mother's face would soften when my sister walked into a room, the way her whole body would relax, as if she'd been holding her breath until the right child arrived. Or how my father had this habit of checking his watch whenever I talked for longer than a minute, like he was calculating acceptable intervals of attention. I wasn't unloved. That would have been easier to name, easier to fight against. I was tolerated, appreciated in the abstract. The daughter who remembered birthdays, who organized the photo albums, who could be counted on to show up and not make waves. Functional, reliable, forgettable. My sister, Vanessa, was the sun. I was the earth. Necessary for the ecosystem, I guess, but nobody writes poems about dirt. I'd made peace with it. Or I thought I had. That's what I told myself during the 3 years I spent in therapy, learning words like enmeshment and differentiation and chosen family. I'd done the work. I had a life I'd built carefully in another city, 2 hours away, far enough to have boundaries, close enough to not be accused of abandonment. I had a career in urban planning that I was genuinely good at, the kind of work where being detail-oriented and steady actually mattered. I had friends who called me when they needed advice, who trusted my judgment, who saw me as someone with substance. But every time I drove back home, something happened. The air changed. I could feel myself getting smaller with every mile, like I was physically shrinking back into the role I'd been assigned at birth, supporting character in Vanessa's story. The dinner was supposed to be for the holidays. My mother had sent a group text 3 weeks in advance, unusual for her, with a subject line that read, "Important, family gathering." That should have been my first clue. My mother didn't do formality unless something was being performed. The message was brief. Your grandfather wants everyone together, December 17th, 6 p.m. Please confirm attendance. Vanessa responded within minutes with a string of emojis and, wouldn't miss it. My father sent a thumbs up. I stared at my phone for a long time before typing back a simple, "I'll be there." Something felt off. My grandfather, my mom's father, was 83 and still sharp as a blade, but he'd never been one for big gatherings. He was a man of few words and long silences, the kind of person who made you feel like you'd been seen and measured in a single glance. He'd built a small commercial real estate empire from nothing, still kept his hand in the business, still made decisions that his grown children deferred to. And he'd always been different with me. Not warmer exactly, but more direct. Like he was talking to a full person instead of a reflection of what he wanted to see. When I was 12 and Vanessa was 14, we'd both gone to stay with him for a weekend while our parents took some anniversary trip. Vanessa spent the whole time trying to impress him, talking about her grades, her awards, her plans. I just helped him in the garden, pulling weeds in silence. At the end of the weekend, he'd looked at me while we washed soil off our hands at the outdoor spigot and said, "You're the kind of person who finishes what they start." It wasn't gushing. It wasn't even particularly affectionate. But I remembered it. I still remembered it. The weeks leading up to the dinner were strange. My mother called me twice, also unusual. The first time was to ask what I was bringing, and when I suggested a dish I'd made before that everyone liked, she paused and said, "Maybe something simpler? Vanessa is bringing her famous Wellington." Vanessa's famous Wellington. She'd made it twice, once for a boyfriend's parents, once for our cousin's rehearsal dinner. Both times she'd posted 17 photos to social media and talked about it for months. "Sure," I said. "I'll bring a salad." "Perfect. You're so easy, Claire." The second call was stranger. She asked if I'd talked to Grandpa recently. "Not since his birthday," I said. "Why?" "No reason, he's just been asking questions." What kind of questions? Oh, about you girls. What you're doing, how you handle things, your values. My stomach tightened. Is he okay? He's fine, she said quickly. Healthy as ever. He's just in a reflective mood, I think. You know how he gets. I didn't, actually, but I didn't say that. The night before the dinner, Vanessa called me. This was even more unusual. We didn't talk on the phone. We exchanged occasional texts in the family group chat and made polite small talk at obligatory gatherings. We weren't close. We weren't enemies. We were just assigned relatives. Hey! Her voice was bright, caffeinated. So excited for tomorrow. Yeah, I said carefully. Should be nice. I think Grandpa's going to make some kind of announcement, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Mom's been dropping hints. What kind of announcement? She wouldn't say exactly, but I think it has to do with the business. Or maybe the properties. He's been talking about legacy planning. I did not know that. Anyway, she continued, breezy and confident, I've been doing a lot of thinking about responsibility. About what it means to carry on a family reputation. I actually might say something tomorrow night. Just, to make sure everyone's on the same page about expectations. There was something in her tone. Something sharp under the sweetness. Okay, I said slowly. Some people just aren't cut out for that kind of visibility, And that's fine. Not everyone can be a leader. Some people are better at supporting roles. My hand tightened around the phone. I'm sure Grandpa sees all of that clearly, she added. He's always valued strength, presence, people who aren't afraid to take up space. I was quiet. Anyway, see you tomorrow. Wear something nice. She hung up before I could respond. I sat on my couch for a long time after that, staring at nothing. My cat, a large orange tabby named Walt, jumped into my lap and headbutted my chin. I scratched behind his ears automatically, my mind somewhere else. Vanessa had always been competitive, that wasn't new. But this felt different, more pointed, like she wasn't just trying to win, she was trying to make sure I knew I'd lost. I didn't sleep well that night. The next day, I took my time getting ready. I chose a navy sweater dress, simple and well cut. The kind of thing that didn't scream for attention, but didn't apologize for existing either. I twisted my hair into a low knot, and put on the pearl earrings my grandfather had given me when I graduated college. A gift he'd handed me privately, without ceremony. Just a small box on the table after the family lunch. These were your grandmother's, he'd said. She didn't wear them often. She saved them for when she wanted to remember who she was. I'd never fully understood what he meant, but I wore them anyway. The drive to my parents' house took exactly 2 hours and 14 minutes. I knew because I'd made the trip 100 times, and it was always the same. Highway, exit, back roads through towns that hadn't changed since my childhood. Then the final turn onto the street I grew up on. The house looked the same as it always did. A colonial-style 2-story with black shutters and the kind of landscaping that required professional maintenance. My father's car was in the driveway. So was Vanessa's Audi, and my grandfather's old Lincoln, pristine and dark blue, parked carefully near the garage. I sat in my car for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. You don't have to shrink, I told myself. You're allowed to take up space. It was something my therapist had said so many times it had become a mantra. I wasn't sure I believed it, but I repeated it anyway. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary and expensive wine. My mother had gone full production mode. The dining room table stretched with the leaf insert, the good china laid out, candles already lit even though it was barely past 5. She appeared from the kitchen in a cashmere sweater set, smiling that tight hostess smile she wore like armor. Claire, you made it. She kissed the air near my cheek. Let me take that, she said, reaching for the salad bowl in my hands. She glanced at it briefly. Oh, simple. Perfect. She disappeared into the kitchen. My father was in the living room, drink already in hand, watching a basketball game on mute. He glanced up when I entered. Hey, kiddo. Hey, Dad. That was the extent of it. He turned back to the screen. Vanessa swept in moments later, wearing a wine-colored silk blouse and tailored pants, heels clicking on the hardwood. She looked like she'd walked out of a lifestyle magazine. She was carrying a large ceramic dish covered in foil, holding it like a trophy. Claire! She air-kissed me the same way Mom had. Love that dress. So understated. Understated. The word landed like a diagnosis. She breezed past me toward the kitchen, already talking loudly about oven temperatures and resting times. I stood there in the hallway, alone, feeling like a guest in a house I'd once lived in. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. Firm, steady, warm. I turned. My grandfather stood there, dressed in a crisp button-down and slacks, his white hair combed back, his eyes the same sharp gray they'd always been. He didn't smile often, but the corners of his eyes creased just slightly. Claire. Hi, Grandpa. He studied me for a moment, and I had the strange feeling he could see everything. Every sleepless hour, every moment of bracing myself on the drive over, every word Vanessa had said on the phone last night. You wore the earrings, he said quietly. I nodded. He squeezed my shoulder once, gently, then released. Good, he said. Don't forget who you are in this house. Before I could ask what he meant, my mother called from the dining room that it was time to sit. The table was as immaculate as I'd expected. Crystal glasses, cloth napkins folded into swans. Vanessa's Wellington sat in the center like a centerpiece, golden and gleaming. My salad had been relegated to the far end, beside the bread basket. We took our seats. Vanessa sat directly across from me, my mother to her right, my father beside me, Grandpa at the head of the table. There were 2 other seats filled by my aunt and uncle, my mom's younger sister and her husband, both of whom smiled politely and made small talk about traffic. My mother poured wine. My father carved the Wellington with exaggerated care, while Vanessa narrated the recipe like she was hosting a cooking segment. Everyone nodded appreciatively. I sipped water and stayed quiet. The first 20 minutes were fine, normal, the kind of surface-level pleasant that family dinners require. Then Vanessa started talking about work, about a new title she'd gotten, about a leadership retreat she'd been invited to, about visibility and impact and strategic direction. I've really been thinking a lot lately about legacy, she said, swirling her wine. About what it means to represent a family well, to be someone people look at and think, that's who they are, that's what they stand for. My mother nodded enthusiastically. You've always had that presence, sweetheart. Vanessa smiled. I think it's important, especially now. She glanced toward Grandpa. When decisions are being made about the future. The table went still. Grandpa didn't react. He just cut his food carefully, chewing slowly. Vanessa continued, emboldened. Some people are naturally suited for that. And some people, she paused delicately, aren't. And that's okay. Not everyone can handle that kind of responsibility. My aunt shifted uncomfortably. My uncle suddenly became very interested in his dinner roll. I felt it building. The familiar tightening in my chest. The old instinct to stay small, stay quiet, let it pass. But then Vanessa looked directly at me and smiled. Not everyone deserves to carry a family name, she said softly. Some people just exist under it. My mother didn't say a word. She just nodded. My father stared at his plate. And that's when the silence fell, the thick, airless silence I started this story with. The candle kept burning, the room held its breath, and across the table, my sister sat back in her chair, victorious and glowing, waiting for me to disappear the way I always had. I want to tell you that I said something, that I stood up, that I defended myself, that I finally unleashed years of swallowed words and careful silence. But I didn't. I just sat there, fork still in my hand, looking at the uneaten food on my plate. A piece of Wellington I hadn't wanted, salad I'd brought myself, everything blurring slightly at the edges. It wasn't shock. I'd felt shock before, the sharp, sudden kind that steals your breath. This was different. This was the hollow ring of confirmation. The sound of a door you'd been pushing against for years finally locking from the other side. She'd said it, out loud, in front of everyone, and no one had stopped her. My mother's nod had been small but certain, a punctuation mark. My father wouldn't look up. My aunt was suddenly fascinated by her napkin. My uncle coughed quietly and reached for his water. Vanessa was still leaning back in her chair, wine glass dangling from her fingers, that same small smile playing at her lips. She looked relaxed, triumphant, like she'd just cleared the air of something that had needed saying for a long time. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, not racing, slow, heavy, deliberate, the way it gets when your body is deciding whether to fight or fold. I became aware of small things: the sound of the furnace kicking on somewhere in the house, the faint buzz of the dimmer switch controlling the chandelier, the way the candle wax was pooling unevenly, dripping down one side. And then I heard it, the scrape of a chair, not mine. Everyone's attention shifted like a spotlight pivoting on a stage. All eyes moved to the head of the table. My grandfather was standing, not quickly, not with any theatrics. He just rose, slowly, deliberately, both palms flat on the table for balance. He was 83, but he stood like a man who'd never forgotten how to take up space, how to command it. The room went from silent to suffocating. Vanessa's smile flickered, just for a second. Then it came back, brighter, more expectant. She straightened slightly in her chair, chin lifting. She thought this was her moment. She thought he was standing to agree with her. I knew better. I don't know how I knew. Maybe it was the set of his jaw. Maybe it was the way his eyes had gone flat and unreadable, the way they did when he was about to say something that couldn't be unsaid. Maybe it was just that I'd spent enough quiet hours with him over the years to recognize the particular quality of his anger, the kind that didn't explode, the kind that calcified. He looked at Vanessa for a long moment. She held his gaze, confident, waiting. Then he spoke. "Say that again." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It cut through the room like a blade through fabric. Vanessa blinked. Her smile wobbled. "I just meant, say what you just said," he repeated. Word for word. She glanced at my mother. My mother's face had gone very still. Vanessa swallowed. "I said not everyone deserves to carry a family name." "And who were you referring to?" The question hung in the air, sharp and unavoidable. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward me, then away. "I just think some people are better suited to represent her." My grandfather's voice didn't rise, but it hardened. "You were talking about your sister. Say it clearly." The room had stopped breathing entirely. Vanessa's mouth opened, closed. She looked trapped. "I didn't mean it as an insult. I just think Claire is more. She's better in the background. She's not a leader. She doesn't." "Stop." One word. Quiet. Absolute. Vanessa stopped. My grandfather stood there, hands still flat on the table, looking at her the way you'd look at something you'd just discovered in your house that didn't belong there. "Do you know what I've been doing for the last 6 months?" he asked. No one answered. "I've been watching," he said. "Listening. Trying to decide something important. Something that will affect this family long after I'm gone." Vanessa's face shifted, hope flickering back into her eyes. This was it. The announcement she'd been expecting. She sat up straighter. "I've been trying to decide," my grandfather continued, his eyes never leaving her face, "who in this family understands what a legacy actually is." My mother leaned forward slightly, her hands folded in front of her. "A legacy," he said, "is not a performance. It's not a title. It's not how loudly you speak or how much space you take up in a room." Vanessa's smile was frozen now, uncertain. "A legacy is what you do when no one is watching. It's how you treat people who can't do anything for you. It's whether you build something or just stand on top of what others have built and call it yours." He paused. "It's character. And character can't be faked. Not for long." The air felt thin. "I've watched you," he said to Vanessa, "your whole life. I've watched you perform. I've watched you take credit. I've watched you charm and maneuver and make sure every room knows you're in it." Her face was losing color. "And I've watched her." He turned his head toward me. His expression softened, just barely. "I've watched her show up. Do the work no one thanks her for. Steady herself when this family gave her every reason not to. Build a life that didn't need your approval to matter." My throat closed. He looked back at Vanessa. "So when you sit at this table and say she doesn't deserve our name?" His voice dropped, quiet and devastatingly calm. "You're right about one thing. Not everyone here deserves it." Vanessa's eyes widened. "But it's not her." The words landed like a gavel. My mother made a small sound, something between a gasp and a protest. "Dad, she didn't mean—" "She meant it," my grandfather said, cutting her off without looking away from Vanessa. "And you nodded." My mother's mouth snapped shut. Her face flushed. My grandfather straightened fully, his hands leaving the table. "I had a decision to make," he said. "About the properties. About the business assets. About who I'd trust to steward what I've built." Vanessa's breathing had gone shallow. "I've made it." The silence was so complete I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Claire will have full discretion over the trust. She'll manage the properties. She'll make the decisions. And when I'm gone, she'll be the one who carries this family forward. I stopped breathing. Vanessa's face went white. You can't. I can. I did. It's done. My mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping loud against the floor. Dad, we need to discuss this as a family. We are discussing it, he said evenly. Right now. But Vanessa has always she's worked so hard to. To what? He finally turned to my mother, and his gaze was colder than I'd ever seen it. To make sure everyone knew she existed? To perform competence while letting other people do the actual work? That's not fair, my mother said, her voice shaking. What's not fair, my grandfather said, is watching you erase one daughter to inflate the other. What's not fair is 20 years of Claire being treated like a convenience, while Vanessa was treated like a prize. My father hadn't moved. He sat frozen, staring at the table like he could will himself through it. What's not fair, my grandfather continued, his voice quiet and cutting, is that girl sitting there? He gestured to me. Having to hear her own sister say she's not worthy. In her family's home. At a table she was invited to. And watching her parents stay silent. My mother's eyes were shining. We didn't. You did. She sat back down, her hands shaking. My grandfather turned back to Vanessa. She looked smaller now. Her silk blouse suddenly seemed too big. Her face was blotchy, her eyes wet. You want to know what disqualified you? He asked, not unkindly, almost gently, like he was genuinely trying to help her understand. She didn't answer. It was this, he said. This moment, this cruelty, the fact that you thought humiliating your sister would somehow elevate you. A single tear slipped down Vanessa's cheek. A leader protects, he said. A leader steadies. A leader doesn't need to diminish someone else to prove their worth. He reached down, picked up his water glass, took a slow sip, and set it back down. Dinner's over, he said. And then he looked at me. Claire, walk with me. I don't remember standing. I don't remember leaving the table. I just remember the sound of my own footsteps on the hardwood, the feeling of every eye in that room on my back, and the solid, steady presence of my grandfather beside me as we walked out of the dining room, down the hallway, and out the front door into the cold December night. The air hit my face like a shock, sharp and clean. I gasped it in, my lungs aching. We walked to the end of the driveway in silence. The neighborhood was quiet. Christmas lights blinked on a few houses down the street. Somewhere, a dog barked. My grandfather stopped near his car. He turned to face me, hands in his pockets, his breath fogging in the cold. You okay? He asked. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. He nodded, like he understood. I'm sorry you had to hear that, he said. But I'm not sorry I said it. Grandpa, my voice cracked. I should have said something years ago, he continued. I thought letting you find your own way was the right thing. I thought if I stepped in, I'd be interfering. But I watched it happen, Claire. I watched them choose her over and over, and I stayed quiet. You didn't. I did. His jaw tightened. I told myself it would balance out eventually, that you were strong enough to handle it. And you were. You are. But that doesn't mean you should have had to. I felt something hot behind my eyes. The trust, he said. The properties. The assets. It's all yours. The paperwork's been filed. My lawyer has copies. It's ironclad. I shook my head. I don't need. It's not about need, he said. It's about what's right. And it's about who I trust. He reached out and put a hand on my shoulder, the same way he had earlier. You've been carrying yourself with dignity in a family that didn't return the favor, he said. That ends tonight. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. They're going to be angry, I whispered. Let them. Vanessa's going to. She'll survive, he said. And maybe she'll learn something. But that's not your job. Your job is to stop shrinking. I looked up at him. His eyes were steady. You don't owe them smallness, he said. Not anymore. We stood there for a moment, the cold settling around us. Then he squeezed my shoulder once and stepped back. Go home, he said. Get some sleep. Call me tomorrow. What about? I glanced back toward the house. I'll handle it, he said. This is my mess to clean up, not yours. I wanted to argue, to say something, but the exhaustion was hitting me all at once. 27 years of it, condensed into a single night. So I just nodded. I got in my car, started the engine, pulled out of the driveway. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing there, watching me leave. Solid, unmovable. I drove 3 blocks before I had to pull over because I couldn't see through the tears. They weren't sad tears. They weren't even happy tears. They were the kind of tears that come when something you've been holding finally gets to let go. I didn't go straight home. I sat in my car on a side street 3 blocks from my parents' house, engine running, heat blasting, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left in the world. The tears had stopped, but my face felt tight and hot. My chest ached, not from sadness, from something else, something I didn't have a name for yet. My phone was in my bag. I could hear it buzzing. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't reach for it. I knew what was happening back in that house, the aftermath, my mother's frantic damage control, my father's silent retreat, Vanessa's shock curdling into rage, maybe my aunt and uncle slipping out quietly, pretending they hadn't witnessed a detonation. I sat there until my breathing evened out, until I could see clearly again. Then I put the car in drive and took the long way home, back roads, no highway, the kind of route that adds 40 minutes but lets you think. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, it was almost 9. The temperature had dropped. My breath fogged as I walked from the parking lot to my door. Inside, Walt was waiting, vocal and insistent. I fed him, changed into sweatpants and an old t-shirt, made tea I didn't drink, and finally, looked at my phone. 14 missed calls, 23 text messages. I scrolled through them slowly, my stomach tight. Mom at 8:32 p.m. We need to talk about this, call me. Your grandfather is being unreasonable. He's not thinking clearly. Claire, pick up. This is serious. Vanessa at 8:35 p.m. You knew. You've been working behind everyone's back. I can't believe you do this. He's old. He doesn't understand what he's doing. You're taking advantage of him. Dad at 9 p.m. Can we talk tomorrow? Your mother's very upset. I set the phone down, picked it back up, read them again. Not one of them said, I'm sorry. Not one of them said, what Vanessa said was wrong. Not one of them acknowledged what had actually happened at that table. My phone buzzed again. I looked down. Grandpa, you get home safe? I typed back immediately. Me. Yes, I'm okay. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Grandpa. Good. Don't answer them tonight. Get some sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. I wanted to ask him what was happening, if they were still there, what was being said, but I didn't. I just sent back a simple heart emoji, something I never did, but it was all I had. I turned my phone to do not disturb, crawled into bed, lay there staring at the ceiling with Walt purring against my ribs. Sleep didn't come for a long time. When it finally did, I dreamed about the candle on the table, the flame that wouldn't go out. The next morning, I woke up to 37 new notifications. I ignored them, made coffee, took a shower, got dressed like it was a normal Sunday, but my hands were shaking when I picked up my phone again. I scrolled past my mother's escalating messages, past Vanessa's increasingly unhinged texts accusing me of manipulation, deceit, betrayal, past my father's single follow-up, please call when you can, and then I saw one from a number I didn't recognize. Hi Claire, this is Angela Frost. I'm your grandfather's attorney. He asked me to reach out. Would you be available for a call this afternoon to discuss the trust documentation? No pressure, just when you're ready. I stared at it. It was real. This was actually happening. I texted back, yes, anytime after 2 p.m. works. Then I called the one person I knew would understand. My therapist, Dr. Lena Halston, didn't usually take calls on Sundays, but she told me once that if I ever had an emergency, I could text. I didn't know if this qualified, but I sent the message anyway. Something happened last night. I don't know how to process it. Can we talk? She called me within 20 minutes. Tell me, she said. So I did. All of it. The dinner, Vanessa's words, my parents' silence, my grandfather standing, the trust, the aftermath. When I finished, there was a long pause. Claire, she said slowly, how do you feel right now? I thought about it, really thought. Unsteady, I said. Like the ground shifted and I'm still trying to find my balance. That makes sense. But not broken, I added. I thought I'd feel broken, but I don't. What do you feel? I closed my eyes. Angry, relieved, terrified, and I paused. Clear, like I can finally see what's always been true, which is that I was never the problem. Her silence was the affirming kind. They're going to push back, she said gently. Hard. Your family has a system, and you just became a threat to it. I know. You're going to need boundaries. Real ones. I know, I said again. And you're going to have to let them be angry. That one landed heavier. They're going to tell you you're being cruel, she continued. That you're tearing the family apart. That you're not the person they thought you were. Yeah. Can you handle that? I swallowed. I don't know. But I can't go back to what it was before. Good, she said. That's the right answer. We talked for another 30 minutes. She reminded me of things we'd worked on. Enmeshment, differentiation, the difference between guilt and responsibility. By the time we hung up, I felt steadier. At 2:15, my phone rang. Angela Frost had a calm, professional voice. She was probably in her 50s, efficient and warm in equal measure. She walked me through the basics of the trust, the properties, the assets, the structure my grandfather had set up. It was more than I'd expected. Significantly more. He's been planning this for over a year, she said. Very deliberate, very thorough. Did he tell you why? I asked. She paused. He said he wanted to make sure the family legacy went to someone who understood what it actually meant, someone who'd protect it instead of spending it, someone with integrity. My throat tightened. He also said, she added, her voice softening slightly, that you were the only one who never asked him for anything. I didn't know what to say to that. We scheduled a meeting for later in the week to go over everything in detail. When I hung up, I sat on my couch in the quiet of my apartment, feeling the weight of it settle over me. This wasn't symbolic. This was real, tangible, legal, and my family was going to lose their minds. They did. By Monday, my mother had left 4 voicemails. I listened to them on my lunch break, sitting in my car outside my office building. The first was frantic. "Claire, please call me back. We need to fix this. Grandpa's made a mistake." The second was pleading. "Your sister is devastated. She's worked so hard. You have to understand how this looks." The third was angry. "You've been poisoning him against us. I don't know what you said, but this is not okay." The fourth was cold. "If you don't call me back by tonight, I'm going to assume you don't care about this family at all." I deleted all of them. Vanessa's messages had evolved too. The accusations had sharpened. She'd moved from "you knew" to "you manipulated him" to "you're a selfish bitch who's always been jealous of me." I blocked her number. My father finally called that evening. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hi, Dad." "Hey, Claire." His voice sounded tired. "How are you?" The question was so absurd I almost laughed. "I'm fine." A pause. "Your mom's really upset." "I know. So is Vanessa." "I know that too." Another pause, longer this time. Did you know he was going to do this?" "No," I said. "I had no idea." "He didn't say anything to you?" "Not until last night." Silence. "Dad," I said slowly, "do you remember what Vanessa said to me at that table?" He didn't answer right away. She was out of line. She told me I didn't deserve our family name." "I know. She shouldn't have. And you said nothing." The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. "I didn't know what to say," he finally admitted, his voice barely audible. "You could have said she was wrong, Claire. You could have told her to stop. You could have stood up for me. You could have done literally anything other than sit there and let her humiliate me in front of everyone. It all happened so fast. It's been happening my whole life, Dad." I heard him exhale shakily. "I don't know how to fix this," he said quietly. "I don't think you can." He was quiet for a long moment. "So what now?" "Now I move forward," I said. "And you all decide whether you can accept that. Your mother thinks you should refuse the trust. Give it to Vanessa. Make things right." Something hot flashed through me. "Make things right," I repeated slowly. "You mean make things comfortable for you?" I'm not refusing anything," I said, my voice steady. "Grandpa made his choice. I'm honoring it." "Claire, please." "I have to go, Dad." I hung up. My hands were shaking. But not from fear. From something that felt a lot like power. The meeting with Angela Frost happened on Thursday. Her office was downtown, all glass and clean lines. She walked me through everything. Properties in 3 states, commercial real estate holdings, investment accounts, a portfolio that had been carefully managed for decades. "You'll have full discretion," she said. "He set up an advisory board if you want guidance, but the final decisions are yours." "What about my parents?" I asked. "My sister?" "They're beneficiaries of a separate, smaller trust. They'll be taken care of. But they have no control over this one." I nodded slowly. "He also included a letter for you," she said, sliding an envelope across the desk. "He asked me to give this to you privately." I took it with careful hands. Back in my car, I opened it. The handwriting was my grandfather's, slanted, firm, unmistakable. "Claire, if you're reading this, then you've met with Angela, and you know what I've done. I don't expect you to feel ready for this. No one ever is. But I need you to understand something. I didn't choose you because you're perfect. I chose you because you're solid, because you show up, because when life knocked you down, you got back up without making it everyone else's problem. Your sister has talent, but talent without character is just noise. Your mother loves you both, but she spent so long propping Vanessa up that she forgot you were standing on your own. I'm not punishing them. I'm protecting what I built, and I'm trusting you to do the same. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to feel guilty. You're going to wonder if you deserve this. Let me answer that now. You do. Not because you're my granddaughter, because you're you. Don't shrink. Don't apologize. Don't give it back to make them comfortable. Stand, love, Grandpa. I sat in that parking lot and cried for the second time in a week. The calls from my mother stopped after I sent a single text. I'm not discussing the trust. Grandpa made his decision and I'm respecting it. If you want to have a relationship with me that isn't about this, I'm open to that. But I won't be guilted or manipulated. Take some time and let me know. She didn't respond. Vanessa sent one final message 2 weeks later. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed this family. I didn't block her that time. I just didn't reply. Because the truth was, I hadn't destroyed anything. I'd just stopped pretending the cracks weren't there. 3 months later, my grandfather invited me to lunch. We met at the same diner we'd been going to since I was a kid. Vinyl booths, laminated menus, coffee that tasted like it had been sitting since morning. He looked good, healthy, calm. How are you doing? He asked. Better, I said. And I meant it. The properties? I've been working with the advisory board. We're planning some updates to the Oak Street building. I think we can increase value without losing tenants. He nodded approvingly. Smart. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. Have you talked to them? He asked eventually. I knew who he meant. Dad called a few times. Surface stuff. He's trying, I think. In his way. And your mother? No. Vanessa? I shook my head. He sighed. I'm sorry for that. I'm not, I said. It surprised me how true it was. I spent my whole life trying to earn their approval. I'm done. He looked at me for a long moment. You sound different. I feel different. Good. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand once. Brief, warm, solid. I'm proud of you, he said. And for the first time in my life, I didn't deflect. I didn't minimize. I didn't make myself smaller to make the moment comfortable. I just said, thank you. Here's what I learned. Some families will love you conditionally and spend years making you believe it's your job to meet the conditions. Some people will only see your value when you stop begging them to. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is stop setting yourself on fire to keep people warm who won't even acknowledge the flame. My mother eventually sent a short email. It didn't apologize. It didn't acknowledge what had happened. It just said she hoped we could move past this someday. I wrote back, I've already moved past it. The question is whether you can accept who I am now. She never responded. Vanessa and I haven't spoken since that dinner. I don't hate her. I don't wish her harm. But I also don't miss her. And that, more than anything, tells me how little we ever really had. My father and I have a fragile, cautious relationship now. We meet for coffee sometimes. We talk about safe things, work, weather, books. He'll never be the father I needed. But I've stopped waiting for him to become that person. My grandfather is still here, still sharp, still the only person in my family who sees me as I actually am. And I'm still standing. Not perfectly, not without scars, but standing. The trust is growing. I've made decisions I'm proud of. I've learned more about real estate and legacy planning than I ever thought I would. I've stepped into a role I never asked for and discovered I'm good at it. But more than that, I've stopped apologizing for taking up space. I've stopped shrinking to make other people comfortable. I've stopped believing that being quiet means being less. Some nights I still think about that dinner. The candle, the silence, my sister's smile cracking, my grandfather standing. And I think about the version of me who drove to that house, hands tight on the steering wheel, telling herself to just get through it. She didn't know what was coming. She didn't know she'd walk out of there a different person. She didn't know that sometimes the worst thing that can happen is also the thing that sets you free. I wear my grandmother's pearls often now. Not for special occasions. Just because. Because they remind me who I am. And I don't need anyone's permission to remember that anymore. So here's my question for you, because I think this matters. Have you ever been in a position where you had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself? Where you realized that the cost of staying small was higher than the cost of standing tall? Have you ever had to walk away from people you loved because loving them was costing you yourself?